All right. We are here now to talk about Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story. Famous, glamorous, and beautiful Hollywood actress, but whose true and lasting legacy is that of a technological trailblazer. And we're going to talk more about that with Bombshell's director, screenwriter, and producer, Alexandra Dean, Emmy Award-winning journalist and producer for PBS before becoming a series and documentary producer at Bloomberg Television. She is best known for the series Innovators, Adventures, and Pursuits. She also writes about invention for Business Week magazine. So there's a connection right there. Hi, Alexandra. Welcome. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Hi. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. You said last year at the 37th San Francisco Jewish Film Festival at the Castro Theater, when asked about how this movie came about, was that it kind of sort of had its origins in an article you were writing about inventors for Bloomberg. And you said the question occurred to you, could it possibly be true that our whole world has been designed by people who look a certain way? And you were looking for a story that might answer that question. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
That's right. Well, Bloomberg was starting this program called Bloomberg West, which was based here in Silicon Valley and was supposed to really delve into the world of inventors and innovators. And so I was lucky enough to do a series for them called Innovators. And that meant I was talking to people who are inventing our world every day. And I was really getting to do a deep dive into their problems and the obstacles they face. And all of the people of color or women that I talked to who were trying to invent told me the same thing, which was it's a lot harder for us to go to Silicon Valley and be taken seriously. It's almost as if the people who are investing in these inventors are closing their eyes and thinking of an inventor, and they think of a young Thomas Edison. And anyone who fits that mold or looks like them is going to get the money before me. And that really bothered me because I've been thinking about what kind of world are we about to create with AI and all of the computing power we have. And I think we're going to create a very slanted or one-sided world if we don't fling open the doors to more diverse inventors. It's really important. It's crucial that we do.
Now, was that some sort of springboard then
for Bombshell?
For Bombshell, yeah.
It absolutely was a springboard for Bombshell because I was ready to kind of throw off the shackles of working for somebody else and make this great leap into my own company. And I wanted a project that was that would start a conversation that was really important to me, so I could be passionate about it for years. You need to be. And that was Bombshell. Bombshell was that story because it was the story to me that I knew about that exploded this idea that only one kind of person shapes our world, and also started to answer why we don't know more about these diverse people that had invented something interesting.
So fascinating and interesting and multifaceted is this movie as a biography, as a film, and as a portrait of a woman, a mother, a wife, an actress, and an inventor. It was stated in the beginning of your movie that, quote, Hedy had one of the most recognizable faces of her time.
Yes.
And yet she said she was never seen for who she was.
Yes.
So who was she? It was the question that was posed, end of quote. So let's just begin there.
Yeah.
For the purposes of this conversation, who was she?
A cipher, an enigma, wrapped.
I would just say, yeah, right.
Wrapped in a problem.
I would just say, just see my movie. That'll answer that question. Right?
Yeah, I mean that because she was so complicated and the narratives about her were so conflicting, it was certainly a juicy enough question to carry an entire movie. And the answer really comes down to she was something that all of us are, which is multifaceted. And she demanded that her story be told in a careful, complicated way, a way that I wasn't seeing a lot of stories about women being told.
I want to talk about her inventions in a second here, but she lamented the fact that she was primarily seen, for want of a better phrase, as a sex object, but she used her sexuality too, didn't she, to her advantage? I saw that she did.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Hedy used her face and her sexuality as weapons and as tools to open doors, to escape, as an escape hatch sometimes. And who wouldn't, honestly? If you were born with these great gifts that gave you superpowers, would you not use your superpowers in any way you wanted?
What did Zero Mostel say in The Producers? If you got it, flaunt it,
flaunt it, baby, flaunt it.
Yeah, right. Right, yeah.
It's one of my favorite lines ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And embarrassingly, I knew of Hedy Lamarr because of Mel Brooks, because of Hedley. That's why I was curious about the name and found out who she was. So anyway, flaunt it. She did flaunt it. She was amazing with her face because she actually knew its power and dealt with it as if it was something separate from herself. And that is also why she turned on her face at the end of her life, because that weapon, that power, that superpower that she'd always had in her back pocket lost its potency as she got older and ebbed away rather quickly, and people turned on her for it. They got angry with her for it. And so she tried to fix that with her inventive mind. She tried to even invent new plastic surgeries. And she was willing to experiment in this brutal way with her own face because I think she had that sense that it was something separate from her. It was this weapon she had. And she thought she could fix that weapon like she was tinkering with an object. And she didn't. She messed it up. It didn't work because she was being so pioneering with the plastic surgery, and they didn't know about it.
She was literally experimenting on herself.
Oh yes, all the time. All her life, she experimented on her face. In fact, she did early pioneering plastic surgery that really worked. That's part of why she was so beautiful.
Right.
But I
know a lot of that is lighting too in the movies.
Oh yeah, and retouching. I just went to visit Getty Images Archive
and
in London, and they were showing me how retouched her pictures were. I was like, oh my god, like the Kardashians today. She was a full Renaissance workshop kind of product.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I loved about this story is that while the best of screenwriters, I was telling Mark on the way up, they couldn't make any of this up.
Yeah.
All this other stuff, the inventions, etc., was happening behind the scenes, so to speak, behind the illusion of her profession. And all the stuff Lamarr lived through prior to convincing Louis B Meyer into hiring her, and everything that happened after her breakdown, all that was private and filtered through the lens of her reputation. That kind of is mind-boggling to me. That somebody could actually not only live that, but survive it and then talk about it.
Yeah. You mean that split, that dichotomy of trying to keep this facade up and then, having the problem of the scandals which taint the facade, and then behind that having...
Well, and also just being known as this beautiful, glamorous movie star, but, in between takes or whatever, or at night when after she would be filming for whatever it was, 12 to 14 hours or whatever their days were back then, she would be inventing things.
Yeah.
All unbeknownst to her quote-unquote public.
Right. This woman had more superpowers than just the face and the sexuality.
She was inspiration for Catwoman.
She was the inspiration for Catwoman. And when I watched Wonder Woman, frankly, I was going, this is Hedy Lamarr. Hedy was Wonder Woman. She, can you imagine being born with those kind of superpowers? Your face can make anybody swoon and make people fall silent as you walk in the room. Your bravery is unparalleled. And you have this incredible mind that can solve all of these problems. She was a superhero in some ways. She didn't seem to need to sleep. She was inventing after acting on 3 different sound stages with the 3 leading men of the day. She would then invent all night with Howard Hughes. I mean, what was going on with this woman? The problem was all of those superpowers in her engendered a certain hubris. And she also was too bold about experimenting on herself. So she was willing to take these drugs that she thought also would make her superpowers last longer.
That's interesting. Oh, geez.
Yeah, she thought these drugs, the meth, which was called at that time vitamin B12, was the elixir of youth.
Yeah, that was a new thing for me.
Right.
Really, they actually called it B12.
Yeah, vitamin
it wasn't
B12.
B12.
No, it was a mixture of goat's blood, eel semen. I don't even know how you find that, honestly. Can you imagine how small that is?
Yeah.
And it was pure, unadulterated meth, early meth. And so she was being injected with that almost every day, thinking this was the elixir that was going to keep her forever young and keep those superpowers potent.
That stuff does bad things to your brain cells.
That destroyed her mind, and then the plastic surgery destroyed her face. So she went too far. She was an Icarus of sorts. She flew too close to the sun, and she was too intoxicated with her own powers.
Why do you think the Navy rejected her and George Antheil's patent? Do you think it was primarily due to sexism, or was there something else going on there?
I think just attributing the rejection of the patent to sexism is too simple, too simplistic. The Navy was way behind the Nazis. The U.S. Navy was way behind the Nazis when it came to torpedo technology. What Hedy knew about, she knew from sitting next to Nazi torpedo engineers at this big Christmas party that they'd held in 1936 at her house with her munitions manufacturer husband, Fritz Mandel, by her side. She'd heard that they wanted to make a remote control torpedo because that could dart through the waves and track down any ship that you wanted to blow up with deadly accuracy, and could have ended the war right there. It was such a potent weapon. And so Hedy thought when she got to America, I'm going to create this weapon for the Allies, and that will end the war in our favor. The problem was the Allies hadn't even been testing their torpedoes with the correctly weighted mock-ups. So we were just hoping for a torpedo that worked, that was the right weight, let alone a futuristic remote-controlled torpedo that the Nazis were working on. So what she handed them was something that was completely foreign to them. It was so far from anything that they were trying to create themselves that they didn't understand what they had in their hands. And then add on to that they were thinking, here's a musician and a movie star who left school, both of them at 15, and never had any advanced degree in engineering or mathematics, and they just dismissed it out of hand.
The concept of frequency hopping and her patent for the remote control torpedo and the system for secure communications between the ship and the torpedo, and the notion referenced in the film that this wasn't original, that she stole the idea.
This is amazing. So Hedy in the 80s told one man that she'd done this thing. And the man she told was the great historian of secret communications, Robert Price, who was working with another Robert Schultz, to write what would become the manifesto, the tome that everybody would consult about how secret communications came about. And so she knew it was important to talk to him. And she came out of reclusion and told him in the lobby of her apartment building in New York in 1982 that she'd done this thing. She created this invention and he asked her, did you steal it from your husband? And she said, no. He wouldn't even let me into the factory, what she says on the tapes. And then he said, did you steal it from George Antheil? Did he really do it? And she said, no, I came up with the ideas. He wrote them down, which George confirms in all of his private correspondence. Robert Price did not accept that narrative from Hedy Lamarr. So I have an email in which he writes the actual transcript of what she says, and then I have a set of correspondence from him where he redacts that line and replaces it with his own theory that she was a spy. And that is the theory that went out into the scientific community. So there was one man that decided to change that narrative. And we hear from him in the film. We hear that recording of him making his case.
The movie made me think of Fizzies. I remember Fizzies. What you see, you don't know what Fizzies is.
Are they the little tablets
when
that
I
did come about?
When I was a little kid, this is giving away my age here, but when I was a little kid, they had this drink. It was called Fizzies, and they were like tablets that you'd put into a glass of water, and it would fizz up, and it would be like a Kool-Aid kind of drink. So she must have, obviously she didn't patent the name Fizzies, but when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, that's what
Fizzies.
That was like the drink for kids when we were little. We would love to get Fizzies just because we wanted to watch the thing fizz in the water because it was so cool. And she invented that.
Right. She was coming up with this soda alongside Howard Hughes, using a couple of his chemists. And it was supposed to, be a cherry cola with one tablet or a lemonade kind of drink with another.
There was cherry, raspberry, cola, and I think root beer Fizzies.
It's exactly what she was trying to develop. I didn't even know about that, but I know those were the flavors she was trying to develop.
It made me realize, wait a minute, she probably never saw any money from that either, because that was Fizzies was probably a patented brand name,
right.
But it was the exact same concept.
Yeah. Well, that happened to her again and again, she said. She would come up with things, and other people who were more sophisticated about the patenting process would make the money from them.
Can you talk about how the structure of the film was affected by the discovery of the 1990 Fleming Meeks tapes that he used as the basis for his Forbes article about her? So 6 months into the film, I was making a very different film. I did not have the tapes. I did not think that anything existed where Hedy Lamarr told her own story in her own words, because she had withdrawn so violently from the world and did not want to tell her story, was so bitter about it. I didn't know if she'd ever really told it. And everybody was telling me she hadn't. And so I was working with the only things I had at my disposal, which was her movies, some private letters, and this autobiography she hated about her scandals, none of which discussed the invention. Yeah. And so the way that I was making the film was very artsy. It was very interpretive.
It was non-chronological. And suddenly, 6 months in, I have this crisis and realize I need her voice, that this is not doing her any great service, that I am falling into the trap that everybody else has fallen into, which is to say, I can present her story as if I know when I don't know what really happened. And so we went on this great big treasure hunt. We did manage to track down the one man who had asked her the magic question in person, did you do this thing? And had recorded her answer in 1990 when she was a recluse. He was a kid who had been madly in love with her. His father happened to have been a rocket scientist who knew this rumor that she had come up with an invention. He called her up and recorded her over the course of 4 conversations. And this tape, which needed to be, radically revived and re-engineered in order to work, was a new backbone for the film. And as I listened to the tape, Hedys started to talk to me. She was telling me what was important to her. And it wasn't what I thought was important to her. And so I was having these arguments with Hedys all night. I would talk to her. But, you keep saying the worst point of your life was this crazy Vienna in the Alps that you try and recreate in Aspen. And I'm saying that's not even interesting to me. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the shoplifting and everything. So can you just make that your dark point in your life? Because I don't want to have 2 downbeats, And Hedys saying on the tapes, no, the really important, horrible moment of my life was when I lost Aspen. And I'm like, oh, all right. And, it just kept being like that. I would listen to the tapes and she was trying to tell a different story than I was trying to tell. And so I actually allowed it, I started to just draw it out more and more, try and refine and crystallize what she was really trying to say. And that totally radically changed the structure. Hedys wanted to unfold her story beat by beat. She wanted to unfold it linearly. She wanted to tell it so it built, so you could, you couldn't do anything but affirm this brilliant mind was housed in this beautiful face and this brave body, and that she did turn out to be the extraordinary woman who did this extraordinary thing and was never recognized for it.
Well, Bombshell makes the case for her being an American patriot, a national hero.
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
And she did on those tapes, and she did it in this really incredible way to me when I sat back and just listened to her. And so that's what I decided to do with the film. Just let people listen to her and really hear her story for the first time, and then use all the other research and all the other layers that I put together to really reinforce that narrative. She always hid the fact that she was Jewish. That thing is loaded. The Jewish thing. I'm half Jewish. It was one of the most interesting parts of the narrative to me. Yeah. I happen to have a Jewish grandfather who escaped the Nazis in this incredibly parallel way, ended up on a boat with someone from Samuel Goldwyn's company, and ended up going to Hollywood and actually having a career in Hollywood because of his boat trip across. Okay. Oh, and so... Yeah, see, right there, you had to make this movie. Well, and I also had always thought, what if he'd been a woman? What would he have done? Yeah. And so Hedys' story began to answer that for me. Wow. Yeah, well, I know there was so much anti-Semitism around. We still have a lot of that today. It's just not as out in the open. But it's a bit self-hating in Hollywood because everybody's Jewish. Well, the Jews created Hollywood. So what's the issue? I know. But there is an issue, and for Hedys, it was the situation where she was actually handed a new biography when she landed in Hollywood. Howard Strickland gave her a little booklet, and it said, "You grew up Catholic. Memorize this." And so Howard Strickland was the MGM publicity genius, fixer. That's right. Yeah, he was the guy, right? That if you got in trouble or you were in a bar fight the night before, he'd iron it right over. You'd never know. You could murder someone. Some of the stars did. Yeah, and Howard Strickland would sort it out. But Howard Strickland would also tell you, this is what you're going to memorize. And so Hedys had a little booklet, and it said she was Catholic. And in her earliest interviews, you see her telling people about her Catholic childhood, a Catholic father. And in fact, when I started making the film, all the biographies bought that and said she was Catholic. But we found the paperwork where she tells her mother urgently, as her mother's fleeing the Nazis in 1938, you must convert to Catholicism on your way. Do it for me. Do it for me. What do we know exactly of her relationship with Louis B Meyer? What was it was complicated and dark. The thing is, what I have in her letters back to her mother is a little bit coded because these letters were opened and read, and she knew that. She's writing to her mother on the top of the letter, remember, this is going to be read. But she is expressing a huge amount of grief and bitterness about how she's being treated by Louis B Meyer and his henchmen. One of the problems was that Louis B Meyer had this enormous amount of power over her, partly because nobody knew she was Jewish and a refugee. Nobody knew her mother was stuck in London in the Blitz. And
so he held that over her.
He held that over her, and she was totally at his mercy because she was pleading with him every day to get her mother out. And only he could do it, and he wouldn't do it. He would ask her to do this for him and then that for him and do this. And so part of the inventing was this pent-up frustration that Louis B Meyer would not help her. So what she was going to do was end the war herself.
Do we know anything about her having to negotiate her way through the casting couch, which was probably more prevalent than ever? And given her, drop-dead gorgeous good looks, I mean, she probably had to fight people off endlessly. I know that's kind of hard to prove.
Heddy was very sexual. So what's very hard to navigate is that she was also actually kind of she was alpha in the bedroom. She seduced people a lot. So it's very hard to say where Heddy was a victim.
Okay.
She actually seduced a lot of women in a very aggressive way.
Sure.
And so I found that very hard to navigate. It's very difficult to know what's truth and what's fiction when it comes to those kind of records, because obviously people love to spin it. And how do you fact check that?
Right.
So we only just kind of gesture towards that in Bombshell. But I think from what I know, the truth is that she was very aggressive in the bedroom. Was she also forced into sexual acts that she didn't want to do because of her position in Hollywood? Well, when she was trying to get her mother over here, almost certainly. Because that's the kind of bitterness and anger that I'm seeing in the letters around this struggle. What
did she think of her own acting abilities? Did you ever get a sense of that through the...
She didn't think they were very good. She didn't think her films were very good. She did not think that was the legacy she left the world.
It's interesting because I think movie acting, you can get away with more, I think, in movie acting. And I think of Garbo and I think of Dietrich. And you can make an argument saying, God, they're weird performances.
Yeah.
I thought hers, and I don't think they're weird. I think I think both those women, and I include Hedy Lamarr in the group, I think all those women had a great gift for what I call movie acting, in that it was partially looks. I guess it was partially, how they saw themselves, but they were able to sell the roles that they were playing really effectively and in a way nobody else could have done.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if she, if you got any sense of what, she not so much.
How she, I think Heddy is best before she gets to Hollywood. I think she's amazing in Ecstasy. I
finally saw it.
Yeah. What did you think?
I mean, it's a silent movie almost. It says subtitles, right? And I think there were like 4 subtitles in the whole movie, but it's pretty much a silent movie with music.
Yeah. I found it, because there's no words, I think.
Yeah.
I found it surprisingly current, surprisingly easy to watch and emotive. And I think her acting is quite beautiful because it's all done in her face.
She's terrific in it.
Yeah.
They say her best performance was as an independent-minded woman who bucks the idea of being a traditional wife in King Peter's Paul and Esquire. I've never even heard of that film.
You know why? It is an excellent film, and it is probably her best.
Have you seen it?
Definitely, yes. It's her best performance in Hollywood. But the problem with H.M. Pullum Esquire is it was released at the moment of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And so it went down with the ships, basically.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
But it would have been, I think, very successful. She was that in the title. I mean, come on. Who's going to go see H.M. Pullum Esquire?
I know.
Jesus Christ.
Right. And the first time I saw her as a child was on television in Samson and Delilah.
Yeah.
And I just thought, seriously, I'm like 8 years old or something, and I'm thinking, man, you don't want to mess with this woman at all. I said that to my mother. I said, I wouldn't want to even mess with her.
Yeah.
But I thought she was great in that film.
No, she was great in Samson and Delilah.
Yeah.
I mean, as great as you can be in a film that's basically a farce of itself, But
DeMille directed all his actors like they were in silent movies using that style. They were all exaggerating stuff, but she was terrific.
She was also probably high on meth, because DeMille was the one who had his actors injected with it. He was close to Dr. Feelgood, and it's almost certain that she began her addiction on that set.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Sorry for destroying your childhood romance.
No, that's okay. That's the movies. What connection, if any, does Bombshell have to the upcoming Hedy Lamarr miniseries with Diane Kruger, who's in the film too? She's on camera.
She is. Well, the connection we have is the Sloan Foundation. The Sloan Foundation has been behind the Hedys story for about 2 decades, fueled by the dedication of one man, Doran Weber, who is at the Sloan Foundation. He has wanted to get Hedys' story out since he funded a play called Frequency Hopping in New York. And he's funded Hedys' Folly by Richard Rhodes, and he funded Bombshell. Well, half the film was funded up front by the Sloan Foundation, and now he's behind this miniseries with Diane Kruger. So, people ask, what does it take to change the narrative when it comes to films and who makes them and what stories we're allowed to tell? Well, it takes the dedication of someone like Doran Weber, a very unusual man who's a real feminist in his own right and desperately wants his story told.
We've just got a couple minutes here, but one of the things you also said about Bombshell when it was screened for the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival was that, and I was thinking about this all during this conversation, because there's so much that could, in addition to what is in the film, that could have gone into the film. If just Hedys' movies, or maybe her marriages.
Yeah.
That's like a movie in itself. But you said that there was a second film about Hedy Lamarr on the cutting room floor.
Easily a second film, probably 9.
You've got to elaborate a little bit on that here in summation.
Yeah, because to give you an example, the things we cut out of this film, everyone says, oh, you should have put that back in. Oh, you should put that back in, to the point where I'm like, well, now we've got a 3-hour film, But for instance, her life intersected with history, with these great moments of history, the way that Forrest Gump's life intersects with history. And so there are these major experiences she had that just didn't interact with the narrative of the invention and the beautiful face and the inventive mind, but that were very, very big, like Charles Manson. When he was making his list of the 42 celebrities that he wanted to kill, Hedy Lamarr was on the top of that list. And she lived just below Sharon Tate at the time. And the FBI came to tell her that she was on this list. And at the time, she was already getting a little paranoid because so many people would send her kind of hate mail about her losing her good looks. And now she found out that this crazy man wanted to murder her. And she had to flee. The FBI made her flee. And that was not a big enough moment to make it into this film, to give you a sense of what's on the cutting room floor.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm really getting to the point where I'm starting to really like the FBI now with, hearing about that story, and Mueller, of course. And my next story is about a female FBI agent, one of the first in American history. The movie is Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story. It's incredible and amazing, and every adjective, superlative we might use it's gonna sound like a cliche, but bottom line is run and see this movie. And thank you, Alexandra Dean, for bringing this story to the world. I really loved the movie.
Oh, thank you so much.
I
really appreciate talking to somebody with this kind of passion and knowledge.
Well, gee, I don't know what to say. Thank you for doing this.